Good morning. It's Tuesday. Game recap day. Well, yesterday's session. Interesting. I predicted yesterday that I thought the encounter with the elves would take up the majority of the session, which it did, and that I thought it would be very difficult for them to get out of there unscathed. And it proved to be. They did manage to get out of it without combat. Good for them. But before we jump ahead to that, there was a couple things that happened before the elves, which are possibly worth mentioning. The first one, of course, is that Mr. X woke up. Now, as you may remember, Mr. X is the crystal golem-like man with memory issues, and he had been training with the monks at Way in order to try to regain his memories. And over the last couple sessions, he undertook a ritual to help him do just that. And he has now woken up from that ritual. And I have made him aware of what has changed and what has gone on, and exactly what that means for him as a character. The rest of the group is not yet aware, so I'll leave it out of this until next week. But yes, that was interesting. There was also a bit of planning going on the ship as far as who was doing what, when, and where. There was an agreement made that Shorty and O1 should not be on the ship at the time that things kicked off. Two of the NPC crew members that have other bounties on their heads. There was actually an odd event with O1, the group's resident runaway paladin, where he had originally been ready to run and then spoke to the captain, had a very heart-to-heart conversation, decided that if she had faith in him, he would be willing to stay by her side and basically, if need be, fight on her behalf. And then following that, almost immediately after that conversation, he then changed his mind and came back and told her that he had decided to turn himself in. Which, had she rolled anything higher than about an 8 on her insight checks, might have seemed out of the ordinary for him. Unfortunately, she didn't. So, he was then taken by Vorian to turn himself into a place called Dungeon, the Chained Moon, where presumably now he's in a very bad situation. Shorty was dropped off on Way, which you know is the same world that we just left Mr. X at, but not at the temple, just in the desert. And left there for basically during this event going on. As that was all happening, the three people in question, Tiawan, Susha, and Bill, went with Yoki, the bounty hunter, to meet with the elves. The gym basically passed them by as they were all on the horizon, and set anchor just within the sphere. They were all interrogated. The elves showed them basically major images of the events as they had managed to divine them, which basically, as I covered previously, showed exactly what happened in Red Eye, except putting all of the blame on Susha rather than Sanshara, showing Sanshara was not present at all. Of course, they then tried to implicate Susha. When the elves investigated that, they found that there was actually evidence that Susha was spheres away at the time, giving a speech with the Prince of Brawl on Brawl. But because the elves were divining quite a bit of information that was not said, as well as what was said, it brought some questions to them. There were times when it seemed members of the crew were speaking truthfully, even though the elves had contrary information. Now, because at the time they did not have enough evidence to, at that point, then determine basically which group was fooling them, they, as a compromise, decided to let them go for now, conditional that they submit to Elven runes, which will allow the elves to track them, scry them, know where they are, and summon them if need be. Basically, kind of the Elven version of a house arrest bracelet. You know, you only go where you're supposed to go, otherwise you're in trouble. That kind of thing. So that was done. They then made their way towards the actual port at Evernight. They picked up Shorty. Excuse me, it's Tuesday. It's been a long week already. They picked up Shorty, but because of the fact that they think the elves are now able to scry on them anytime, they don't know when the elves are actually scrying on them, they couldn't exactly bring Shorty back to the gem. So they brought him back to the Horizon, told him what was going on, and basically told him if he went onto the gem or if he went anywhere near the captain, Bill, or Susha, the elves would find him. Basically what that meant was as soon as they hit the docks, he ran. He didn't want to be anywhere near a situation where the elves could find him. He has already shown to be genuinely terrified of what happens if he gets found. That may come up again later. We don't know. We'll see what happens with it. What else happened? Oh, yes, we finished the 12-month time lapse that has now taken us, I believe, 4 sessions to get through. The ship did some cargo runs, just basically kind of dropping suspicion. And at the end of the year, Vorian and Bill decided to make use of the deck of many things that they had found. Now, the deck of many things, a lot of people say it's a dangerous card, that it can derail campaigns. I agree with the first part, but not the second. At least, if the campaign is structured correctly. Yeah, I could see in a low power kind of dungeon delve campaign how it could wreck things. I could see in a kind of character family driven campaign how, yes, it could wreck things. But at least in the games that I run, it's fine. Character death is a real possibility anyway. The pros and cons are usually available through other means in my games anyway, so because of the power level that I normally run at, it isn't as bad. On top of that, I have a modified deck that I run. Modified not to make it less dangerous, but in a lot of ways to make it both more dangerous and more beneficial. I've ramped the power level of it up quite a bit, and it's actually a full 52 card deck. So at the end of the year, Vorian and Bill decided, what the hell, let's have a draw from the deck. And they plane shifted away from the crew, found themselves a lifeless planet, and Bill decided to draw 2 cards. And as fate would have it, the very first card that he drew was a card that is called Journey's End, which simply states, you die, you cannot be resurrected. So, we lost a character, even though we had no combat. And for the humor element following it, because there always ends up being some element of humor of it, he had drawn 2 cards. The second card was another one of the cards out of my custom deck called the Jellyfish, which basically summons a flump. For those of you who have never played 2nd edition D&D, I don't know that they've been printed since then, but flumps are probably one of the stupidest things to ever come out of D&D. Psychic, flying, jellyfish, squid thing. Summoned a flump, which then covered the entire area nearby with a stinking, inky goo. Now, for his own safety, cowardice, Vorian had teleported away while Bill drew the cards. He returned to find Bill's dead body covered in stinking goo with a flump standing over it. So of course now Vorian believes that Bill, I believe 15th level ogre, yes, he's an ogre rogue, of some intelligence, was killed by a flump. And we left it with Vorian returning to the ship with Bill's body, and we'll look at the fallout of that in the next session. So, there we have it. That was this week's Monday game. Elves, runaways, lost crew members, and death by flump. I'll see everybody tomorrow for one of my rambling videos. I've got a list of requested topics, and I'll probably roll a die and go with one of those. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Have a good day.